It's amazing how statues from the past still look like the individuals in some parts today. And as you can see with these Greek statues, the people have barely changed in terms of morphology. So, if the ancient Egyptians are black Africans, we should see the same type of maintenance in terms of physical appearance. So let us look at Africans and compare them to the statues of back then. The features that the ancient Egyptian obsess over are those that we would call black African features. And as you can see, the broad nose that would have been there had it not been cracked. The long lips. Keep in mind, the African lips aren't just thick, they're also like long. Also, if you pay attention to Nofret as well, she has a very similar look to this African woman. Now, they're standing slightly in different positions, but you can see that the similarities are there. This woman from Rwanda and this statue from ancient Egypt also have various similarities. And again, most of these ancient Egyptian statues are taken from the bottom up, which makes them look a little different. But yeah, the men, and I'll just use one example, are almost there's almost no point of bringing up men in ancient Egypt because they look so black. It's not even funny. Like I don't even want to compare them. Like I've put dedicated videos that show what men generally look like, and they look like this. Uh, the final one we'll look at is Queen Tai, who again, Queen Tai has this very African facial feature as well. And of course, we can not look at it from one angle. Now, of course, human beings have similar look altogether because human beings are one species. But you will notice that there's this vagueness that shifts from one look to another. And that's how we know that the ancient Egyptians were most certainly black. When we look at the Middle Easterners, they bear a strong resemblance to the Greeks and other Caucasian type human beings. And so when we look at their statues, which to be honest, there's none of such great quality that you can tease out the race that well. But when you look at it, you can see enough to see that they were pretty sure about the way they looked as well. So when we look at this blue statue, the first thing that will jump at you is the fact that the facial features look nothing like the ancient Egyptians, even though some people claim that the Middle Easterners are the ancient Egyptians. But they do look similar to this Middle Eastern woman, Persian woman. And if you look at the next one, the similarities are similar again to this Middle Eastern woman who lives in England. And the third one as well, that is a very ancient statue. I think it's Sumerian or Persian, and it's also very similar to the woman that I showed right next to it. And again, the race jumps at you. It's almost not even apologetic. And the last one, I put a woman who kind of looks like it, but doesn't really. But the reason why I put it in there is because of the lips. I want to show you that a lot of these lips from the Middle East, a lot of people will interpret them as thick lips, but they're actually very small. It's just that, perspective. Because they put on lipstick, it makes it look like they're bigger than what they are. That's what the point of lipstick is. But as you saw with the other people who are related to this person, their lips are actually rather tiny, especially if you put them right next to black Africans. And so, if we look at all three of them together, this is what we will see. Any person who would even want to consider themselves an artist would recognize instantly that these three images of three women who lived in three completely different societies have nothing to do with each other in terms of their facial features, in terms of everything. Let us go through them one more time now that we can see them side by side. And by the way, I'm going to bring up some bronzes from the Assyrians where they depict Egyptians, and we will see what they saw when they looked at Egyptians. So here it is. We look at the first one, which is obviously a black person. When you put it right next to the other two, it's almost not even funny how different they look. So we stare at it, and the first one's got thick lips. The nose is, again, not as wide as you would expect, but it's pretty wide. The hair is a dead giveaway. And as you can see, this type of hair exists nowhere in the Middle East and in Europe. So obviously the skin color here is the thing that makes people believe that the skin color is the same, but that's like believing that the blue woman at the end is blue in real life, or that this white sculpture in the middle of the Greek person is also this white. But we know that these sculptures were painted, the Greek ones. They were painted afterwards, but the paint has gone away over time. So when we look at the second one, its lips are almost as tiny as the Middle Eastern one, except there's a little bit of remnants there. And both of them are tinier than the Egyptian one, but they're there, and their shapes are very dedicated to a certain style. Not only are they tiny from a height point of view, look at what I was talking about. The first Egyptian one is wide. They're not just they're not just thick, they're wide, which gives this aesthetic of a black African. I mean, just looking at it, you can be like, "Oh, that's a black person." Um, the hair of the Middle Easterner is a little different than the Greek one. As you can see, the way that it's portrayed is through curls, which are sort of stylized. The nose of the Middle Easterner at the end, the blue one, is not as thin as the Greek one, but not thick at all. So again, we looked at them all three at the same time. Let's look at the bronzes that depict, or let's look at the first one that shows what they looked at other people as, the Nimrod people. So this is how the ancient Assyrians depicted themselves. And as you see, it's very consistent with the ones I showed you before. A very long nose, long hair, and as you can see, even though it's not as detailed as the Greeks is, they show that they've got curly hair, as you can see, with little curls at the bottom. You see here a beardless man, and his lips are nothing like ancient Egyptian lips, where they become huge. And as I showed you with the males in ancient Egypt, the lips never play. But what's interesting is how they depict the ancient Egyptians. Because when you look at the ancient Egyptian men who are portrayed, you start to notice prefrontal prognatism, which is this feature from the side view of the Egyptians. And you notice how they're depicting it in a more aggressive way than the ancient Egyptians did it to themselves, which is probably because these people are doing a more accurate, less graceful. So the ancient Egyptians were giving themselves grace by portraying themselves with a sort of sticking out nose a little bit. But these foreigners are looking at them and saying, "No, you look like this." And they're drawing their culture, but then they're sort of making them look like as if they're drawing Nubians, the way that you can see it. And this is not an exception. They do it for every single one of them. Even from front view, you can tell because they throw in thick lips, they throw in broad noses. And I just showed you that they do not do that to themselves. This is a statue depicting an ancient Egyptian. And as you can see with the hair, It's nothing like how they depicted their own hair. And this is the exact same culture. This is the exact same culture, the Assyrians. And as we saw, they depicted themselves with curly hair, whether male or female. But over here, they depicted with a sort of fallen, plaited hair, almost resembling dreadlocks. We know that this person is Egyptian because this was found amongst the other ones that depict Egyptians. But also, he's carrying African animals with him. He's also got a leopard coat thing hanging on his arm. He's wearing a loincloth that is Egyptian. And like I said again, you notice how his face is more African than ever. The reason for this is because the ancient Egyptians themselves, obviously, when they look at themselves, like I said last time, when foreigners depicted black, they made it black, like pitch black. And in the same way, when foreigners depict Egyptians, the features, in order to capture them, they exaggerate or they just stick to like, okay, this is what they really look like. But obviously, when you look at the ancient Egyptians, it's a bit softer than what you would see from a foreigner who is a little bit more objective. Again, if you look at this sort of depiction of Egypt, you can see again it's got prefrontal prognatism. The noses don't protrude as far as you would think they would if they were Assyrian. And you notice that the lips are done a little bit thicker than when they were Assyrian. Their bodies are a little stockier, a little than the Assyrian ones would do to themselves. And of course, they're wearing the Egyptian regalia, which makes it obvious that these are Egyptians being depicted. Even the symbols at the top, but these are from Assyria. And these Assyrians are depicting Egyptians. And again, the way they depict them is not exact to how the Egyptians depicted themselves. The Egyptians depicted themselves with a little, this would be a little mockish, a little cartoonish compared to what the ancient Egyptians would show themselves as. Sphinxes get associated with ancient Egypt, and as you can see, these are Egyptian sphinxes, even though they are sphinxes that are Assyrian in nature by themselves. But as you will see on those sphinxes, they completely make themselves look quite different. Look at this sphinx. Its nose is protruding, its face is very African. Now, it's kind of got a lion body and everything, so you can't tell. But again, let's put it next to their lion version, their sphinx. Like I said before, the mouth is wider, the nose is broader, the lips are fuller, even the face is sort of rounder. But if you look at the Assyrian one, the lips are smaller, the lips are not as wide, the nose is not as broad. And that's because in that one, they are depicting a Middle Easterner, and the other one, they're depicting an African. Even if you look at them from side view, you can see that there is no comparison whatsoever. And some of the features, like I said again, are being exaggerated rather than being brought down. In conclusion, the Middle East is not Egypt. Egypt is a land completely on its own, far away from the Middle East, and it is not supposed to be misappropriated to the Middle East. It's an African civilization, it's a true African civilization. But let's look at this final one. As you can see with this, if you said this was a Roman, I would believe you. Because the Assyrians, like I said, the Romans, the Greeks, the Turks, that type of area, the Syrians, or that entire area, I associate it with one phenotype, and it looks very similar to each other. But when you look at Egypt, all of a sudden that breaks down. And why? Even long beards and big beards are depicted in Greece and Rome by sort of elderly people. Why not when it comes to Egypt? Why not ever? They don't even do it once. Not even one time.